In this video, we're going to be talking about the Glock 17, what some people claim to be the perfect combat pistol. The Glock 17 is one of the most recognizable Glocks because it was one of the first Glocks. In fact, it was the first Glock that Gaston Glock had produced and introduced way back in 1982. And if you ever want to learn the history of the evolution of Glock, how it was developed, there's really a fantastic book out there, and this is it right here. It's called Glock, The Rise of America's Gun by Paul Barrett. So if you want to learn more about what we're going to talk about here, this is a great place to start. It really is, it's got a great history, but ultimately leads you into a better understanding of the Glock 17 and what we have here today. The Glock 17 was originally designed based upon the needs of the Australian military, or the Austrian military, excuse me. And as a result of their adoption in the 80s and 90s, there was a rapid adoption amongst the police departments as well across the United States. The production costs and relative costs of the pistol was very low, and they were able to provide deep discounts to the police departments as well. And naturally, when people see the police carrying the Glocks, they start taking notice to this as well. But my experience with Glock started similar to a lot of other people. My brother had bought the first Gen 1 Glock back in the 1980s, and I remember when he brought it home, I was looking at it in comparison to the other pistols that I had been trained with, namely, the revolvers in the 1911s, and it just seemed like it was a foreign object that he dropped on the table. I had never seen anything like it before at the time. They had things such as, the polymer frames, and then they had a striker fire system without an external manual safety, and then it had this blocky type design on it and this hump on the mag well, and then a magazine that held 17 rounds. This was something that was so revolutionary in so many different ways at the time that most people didn't even know what to think of it. I remember observing it and studying it for hours, trying to think about what is this, because normally over time you'd see little evolutions and changes in pistols, but nothing like this. Nothing as revolutionary and disruptive in the pistol world as we saw with the Glock when it first came out in the Gen 1 variations. And over the years, of course, they've had multiple generations that have made improvements on the pistol, but largely the mechanism is still the same, which is a testament to the sheer genius of what Gaston Glock had created. But back to my experience with the Glock, when I studied it and first fired it, I didn't like it at all because it was so foreign and so different to all the other things I had used and trained. I just kind of wrote it off thinking, you know what, it's not something for me. And I think a lot of people had the same experience, despite the fact that I had the person that had sold it to my brother told him that, hey, this is the future of pistols. You might as well, start paying attention to that. But I didn't, and I went back to my old platforms. But as the years went on, I had one experience in particular where I had a friend of mine who came out of the Special Forces and did quite a bit of covert work in the Middle East. And he had came back and joined the police department. And I remember I had a get-together with him, and he had told me at the time, he had said, listen, he goes, I have trained with all types of handguns and rifles and carbine systems and what have you all over the world, different types, you name it. He goes, but since I have been using the Glock 17 extensively, I have come to realize that, in my experience, this has to be the perfect combat pistol. And that was his comments to me at the time. So at that point, I started taking notice again and thinking, okay, there's something to this. You must know something here. But for somebody who has really been in the thick of it and is trained with all different types of weapon systems, for he to make that claim, it started changing my perception of what the Glock 17 is. So what we're going to do now is talk about some of the details of the Glock 17, some of the accuracy testing, and then ultimately my observations on his observation as well. So the first thing is the Glock 17 has been widely adopted throughout the world. It's been tested worldwide by military and police, and now is currently in its 4th generation. So you've seen variations such as rail mounts and different types of backstrap options and stippling and what have you. But we've seen an evolution of the 17 over the years now into the Gen 4 models. I personally like the Gen 4 models relative to the previous models that are out there. They are also highly reliable. One of the great things about the Glock is it is just something that every time you point and shoot, it goes bang. That's what most people will say. The other thing about the the Glock 17 that I really like is the fact that it can fit most hands really well. I have an average size hand, and in this case I can charge the weapon very easily, including if I have gloves on. And in combat, a lot of the operators are using gloves. But when you look at, for example, the smaller version, the Glock 19, for example, I have an average size hand and I'm just about over on the grip size. Now, if I have if I have gloves on, I'm certainly over on size. And a lot of people with larger hands have this problem with the Glock 19. Even though it's a great platform, it can be very hard, for example, to charge at times simply because of the length of the grip, as opposed to the 17, which tends to support almost all the hands that are out there today. So because of that, it is a great combat size, especially for somebody with hands utilizing glove in combat. It's also a very simple design. It only uses 34 parts and is extremely easy to operate. So you compare that to the old military issues that would have anywhere from 50, 55 plus parts. It is a very simple platform he created, and that's the genius of the Glock platform, is the simplicity of the platform. And that's what people struggle with at times, is trying to understand we're moving away from complexity and moving to simplicity. And that's the real genius of the model, and what took people so long to be able to ultimately come to the conclusion of there's really something here that's special, as opposed to what we've been using for so long. So what are some of the takeaways from the Glock 17 as far as things that people don't like? Well, the first thing is it's taken a lot of people, including people who are seasoned shooters, time to warm up to the model. And it goes very much back to the experience, as I was talking about before. It was such a highly innovative design. It was so different from what people were able to see in the past and use and originally train with, that in many respects people were very slow to adopt these, including myself. It took many years for me to ultimately come around to adopting and accepting the 17 for what it was. And I think a lot of people have that same problem. The other problem I have always had with the Glocks, and I hear this from other people as well, is the slow evolution of the ergonomics, especially around the grips. There's a whole industry now created about modifying these grips, simply because, for example, if you look at the Glocks, they have a hump at the bottom. Now, it's less pronounced on the Gen 4s, and you can put different back straps on them, but again, the grips just aren't always right for everybody when they fire them, and it doesn't always feel that comfortable. So, for example, there are companies out there that just build and modify. They remove the back straps, they change the stippling out. I don't think you need to do that in most cases. I have another video on the Glock $4 grip job that I show, for example, of how to really solve most people's problems with this very simple modification. So if you have that interest, please watch that other video as well. But there is an issue with the ergonomics, and compared to, for example, like H&K's VP9 series, where you have interchangeable side straps and back straps and multiple configurations, it really in many respects is superior to what they've dealt with Glock. And many people have argued that Glock has been way too slow in their evolution of the ergonomics of their grip. And then you'll also notice too, the hold up high into the hand, people will, including myself, I talk about this in the $4 grip job, will shave down a little bit a back of the trigger assembly as well, again, to get the higher purchase up onto the pistol itself. So those are some of the takeaways from it as well. As far as caliber, it's 9mm, which is NATO, widely used worldwide. Many great options that are out there today. You know, a long time ago, back in the 80s, you know, a lot of people argued that the 9mm was underpowered relative to the cartridges and options you had at the time. They switched over, many of them switched over to the 40 cal or 40 Smith & Wesson. But now with the technology coming out with the 9mm loads, a lot of people, including the police departments, are moving back and adopting 9mm, including the special forces and the military units within the Army. So the 9mm really is an excellent all-around round for that utilization. It also comes standard with the 17-round magazine. But one of the great things about the Glock is the modularity of the Glock. For example, there are other larger magazines like the 33 rounds, and then Magpul makes their own as well, where you can extend the magazine capacities for the platform, and these work both on the 17s as well as the 19s. So you don't have to limit yourself, for example, in every application to a 17-round magazine, when in reality is you might need a 19 for your weapon. So again, that gives you a lot more modularity as well. It is a striker fired system, which means that it is a single fire and make safe system, which is again part of the simplicity of the system and so unique. The only changes I really make to my striker fire system is I usually polish the inside components. I use flits as well as a Dremel to be able to shine up the components, but I don't change out the trigger assembly. I want to keep it as is, but make it as smooth as possible. You compare that, for example, to the older platforms that had multiple functions to fire and make safe, such as the 1911s, as well as the single double or the double single actions, where you would have anywhere from 2 actions where you fire and it goes back, and then you have to decock to make safe. Or in this case, if you want to fire single action, fire, and then it resets again, and then you have to make safe, which is 3 options. So those are 3 things you have to commit to muscle memory, where you only have one within the Glock, which is you pull, it resets, and that's it. One step, very simple to train on, very simple to fire, very easy system to utilize. And there was a lot of controversy, again, back to people accepting this initially, because most people were used to having the manual safeties, when the reality is there's different types of safeties built into the Glock system that most people didn't even like and accept. In fact, even the fact that it was one of the first pistols to really utilize polymers in the frames, there were some cities at the time were even freaking out about airports and saying we want to ban plastic pistols because they might not, or they might not be detectable in the metal detectors. But the reality of that was all because people just didn't understand how revolutionary the platform really was at the time. And the striker fire system now is widely utilized in many of the most popular pistols utilized today. Now, as far as ergonomics and weight of the system itself, so when you look at the Glock 17, so empty, it weighs in at about 1 pound and 6.5 ounces. Fully loaded with 17 rounds, it comes in at about 2.1, 2.2, or 2 pounds 2 ounces. So again, very lightweight option, and you compare that, for example, to the SIG P226, which comes in 1 pound and 12 ounces, and then the old standard 1911, which comes in at 2 pounds 5 ounces. So not only are we increasing the capacity of the rounds, but we're also improving upon the weight. And then the smaller version of the Glock 19 is 1 pound 5 ounces, which is just marginally less, but very similar. The other advantage you have with the magazines are the 17 rounds. So traditional police and military, prior to single double action pistols, when they had to shoot revolvers, they had 18 rounds they could carry. A lot of the old revolvers had spurred hammers, so they would carry them on an empty chamber, which means they carried 17 rounds. The same amount of rounds now you can carry in one magazine. And since most people will carry at least 3 magazines, 1 plus 2 extras, you got triple the capacity, or 9 times the capacity of a traditional revolver. So again, you have another benefit of the Glock 17 is there as well, which again, a lot of the other platforms have now moving in that direction. As far as everything else on the pistol, it is a 4.5-inch barrel on the 17 with hexagonal rifling in the barrel. There's also a lot of modularity. You can buy extra barrels with threading and what have you to run suppressors onto the system itself. Takedown and cleaning is very easy, and this is one of the brilliance, again, of the simplicity of the Glock 17 system. So in this case, for example, all you have to do is you pull back, push down these little wings right here, and you can quickly disassemble the pistol into 4 major components. You have the frame, the slide, the barrel, and the spring. And in this case, again, it's very easy to maintain, take apart. In fact, that one of the great things about the Glocks is it's so easy to clean them and so fast to clean them compared to other types of platforms. And then, of course, you just reassemble and you're ready to go, which again makes it a very effective system. Now, as far as cleaning is concerned, one of the changes that happened, especially with the later Gen 4 models, is one of the controversial issues surrounding the Glock 17, which is the finish that is used on the slides. Traditional Glocks up until the early Gen 4s used what was called a tenifer finish. And you'll know if it had a tenifer finish because it has a kind of a really a slick finish. And it's almost a little bit rough, but it's a slick finish that you would see on the pistol that people loved, because in many ways it was very impervious to rusting and corrosion or anything like that. However, they recently moved, especially in the Gen 4s, over to the nitrided process. And you know you have a nitrided pistol when you have more of a flat, smooth finish like you see on this pistol itself. And because of that, there's been some controversy around that. So one of the things I recommend to people is, even though the nitrided finish is still a really good finish, you still might be operating in environments where this could become a problem, especially if you work in saltwater environments or environments where you can get the pistol wet quite a bit. And in that case, there's aftermarket industries, in addition to the grip modifications, also to the metal modification finishes, such as companies like Robar that are out there that use things like an NP3 finish, which is a Teflon finish that they put both on the internals as well as the slide itself, and make it much more reliable, even more reliable than it is today, but also makes it much more impervious to any types of corrosion or rusting issues that you would see potentially with the new finishes that are on the Gen 4. So if you are in those environments and it is a concern of yours, you do have that option to improve the coatings of the metallurgy of the pistol itself. Now, as far as options are concerned, there's a couple things I always do on my Glocks when I buy them. The first thing is I change out the sights. I don't like the plastic sights, the goalpost and front plastic sights that come with them. They're plastic, which means they can break. So what I prefer to utilize is the Trigicom sights that I use, or the high-rise Trigicom sights that I use in the MOE model or MOS model. But these are excellent sights. I always change them out on the Glocks that I own. I also put oftentimes an extended slide release on the slide. It's not necessary, but it just helps me at times when I'm firing the pistol. And then of course the $4 grip job. I don't do it on every one of my pistols, but the ones I tend to fire the most. It just makes it more accurate for me and more enjoyable to shoot, especially with the purchase of the pistol. So these are the three modifications that I usually recommend. There are other things people do beyond that, as I mentioned before, the gripping, the coatings. People even change out the triggers. I don't do that. Again, I just polish it out with flits as well as a Dremel. Take all the movable components that are in the striker mechanism and highly polish and clean them to get it to the point where I need it to be, because you don't want to have a trigger that is too loose to activate in the Gen 4, or I'm sorry, in the Glock, because then you can potentially have some issues where you might have a misfire where it snags in something. So I think that the balance between the safety and the trigger pull that is there right now is very good. And that leads us to accuracy. So with the stock components that you see here today, what kind of accuracy do I get out of the Glock 17 when I shoot it free-handed? It's actually very good. It's some of the best I receive out of any of the pistols that I currently own and shoot. So for example, at 30 feet, you can see I shoot a pretty tight group. It opens up a little bit further at 50 feet. And then moving out to 70 feet, naturally it's going to open up on me a little bit. And then one-handed at 20 feet, rapid fire, again, a very nice, solid, tight group. So a lot of times people ask me, well, what do you give up between a 17, for example, and then 19 if you move down? Well, here's the differences they are for me. The first thing is at 50 feet, I have the Glock 17 groups here and the Glock 19 group. So within short range at 30 feet, really not much of a difference at all, which is usually what I see a lot with my Glocks when I shoot them. Moving out to 50 feet, I start to see a little bit of separation, a little bit tighter groups in my 17 as opposed to my 19. And then moving out to 70 feet is where I see the largest changes between the Glock 17 and the Glock 19. Again, negligible changes, but there is a difference. There is a difference between the two, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Glock 17 just has a little bit longer sight radius than the 19, a little bit more mass, and it's naturally just going to shoot a little bit more accurate as a result of that. Now, as far as alternatives, what are out there compared to that today? Well, Glock has many different variations compared to the 17. So if you have smaller hands or average size hands, you want something a little bit more compact, naturally the 19, and then there's all the types of build downs of the 26 to the 43 single stacks, or you can even go higher if you've got some really big hands and want to shoot bigger calibers. You can shoot the 20s and the 21s, which I have some reviews on as well. But there are a lot of good Glock alternatives, and there's many other striker fires that are out there today. The M&P models, the H&K VP9s, you name it, the SIG P320 that the military just recently adopted. But all of them in many respects were direct descendants of the Glock platform, the Glock 17. And surprisingly, even though they all try to make variations to make something better, in many respects, people like me and others will try them out, but more often than not, I'm always coming back to the Glock 17. Which takes me to the utility of the pistol. What's it good for? This is, in my opinion, compared to everything that's out there, everything I've fired and the people I've worked with, this is as of today, the perfect combat pistol. It is great for home defense. It is highly reliable. This is a crate truck gun. I know people that throw these in their glove compartments. They bang around for 2 years, but the minute they pull it out and fire it, it goes bang. It's just highly reliable, very effective, very affordable for what it is, and it is just a perfect pistol in that regard. It also has been stress tested many times by many different military units and almost always comes out on top. So overall, what is the Glock 17? It is a high quality, high value pistol. Many of the people that buy Glocks, including the Glock 17, the Glock 19, if they bought the Gen 1s and the Gen 2s, are actually worth more now used than they were in many respects than when people actually bought them new. So they really do a great job of holding their value. They're a very simple platform. Now, people have finally come around to it, including myself, but that is the beauty of this model, is the simplicity. You don't need to go all crazy on this model. You don't need to start tuning and all types of adding really expensive components, because you're defeating the whole purpose of why it is such a perfect platform to begin with. It fits the most amount of hands possible relative to what you would use it for, including if you're firing with gloves on, which makes it, again, another great combat option. It is highly, highly accurate compared to everything else I have. It shoots one of the most accurate pistols I have. It is extremely affordable. It holds its value. It is extremely reliable. Almost any failure I've ever had with the 17 had largely to do with the ammunition. I've never once had a problem with the actual pistol, and it is universally used. You're going to see these all over the world. It's easy to buy parts for and components. People are always in demand for the Glocks, which makes them just one of the best platforms out there today. So, in my opinion, the Glock 17 is one of the best pistols, and it is right now, currently in market, is the perfect combat pistol on the market today. If you disagree, you can leave comments. I hope this helped. If you like our channel or like this video, please like us on YouTube, and thanks for watching.